Hey there, everybody. Thanks for joining me for another one-man review. Today I've got a pretty special project that we're looking at. Not quite a comic. It's a graphic novel in a different sense of a book that includes a lot of visuals with it. This is by the author Warren Lehrer. I've previously reviewed Warren's fantastic book, A Life in Books, The Rise and Fall of Blue Mobley. And this is a fake memoir of a author told through um, uh, like a set of interviews, some clips, some like selections from his books, the designs of those books. It's a really interesting piece of visual fiction. So it definitely is on the verge between like a novel, a graphic novel, a magazine. You can see it's kind of like Ryan Hughes's XX. The other artist that I think that's working in this way, literary artist, is Mark Danielowski, who does this kind of thing and does it well. A lot of people do this kind of thing and don't do it very well. The gimmick is all. I think Life in Books is one of the most straightforward and enjoyable like character reads in a really tricky like formalist book, someone who's really stretching the form of what a book can be. So I really enjoyed this, and Warren reached out, and I was like, for an author that I hold in such high regard, someone I think that's kind of innovating what books could be, I was really thrilled and excited that he was even heard my review. So he reached out and sent me a code for this. This is riveted in the Word, and it's a story written and designed by Warren Lehrer. But it's an app that you have to get on the Apple Store, and it costs $5. And Warren sent me over a code so I could get it. So I wish I could review that and show that, but he says that it's like kind of a companion piece to this right here, which is an alternative telling of the biblical tale of Rahab the harlot who lived inside the wall of Jericho. And you can see that this is a very physical project. And that's what Warren was saying. He kind of wanted to have one book that was physical and one book that wasn't, and investigate the material possibilities of including that in the content. So when you read like riveted in the Word, there's effects happening on the screen. And I read it and I was kind of showing it to Tori, and she was complaining like, oh, that I don't want to look at that. That's kind of a good representation of the difficulties I have reading now that she has long COVID and still has the brain fog. A lot of times she can't read so well. And I guess some of the effects that they had in the riveted in Word mimic why it's hard for her to read. So it's really interesting in that they're using the effects. It's a more riveted in the Word is a more poetic piece, but they're using the effects to impact your physiological, psychological state as you're reading to make you feel certain things, which is really cool. I've never experienced that. So I wish I could show that one, but everyone, if you've got an Apple product, you can get it in the Apple store for $4.99, $5 basically. You can see it on your phone, on an iPad, or on a Mac computer. I read it on Tori's iPad, and that's, I think, the preferred reading, but you can get that for $5. And it's well worth it. Then there's this book here, Jericho's Daughter, which is really a beautiful piece of design. It's a pretty easy read, like you can read it in a half hour or so, but it's also like a pretty rich and deep read for the brevity of it. So you can see that it's an interesting style here. And they explain in the book that, or actually, I think it's in the letter that Warren sent me, maybe not. They explain somewhere in here that the reason this particular binding style was chosen is because this is a historical way that New and Old Testaments were bound, with one being like bound in the front and one being flipped on the side like that. There's also some real suggestions of materiality, even though this actually isn't burlap here. They did print on a pretty thick, heavy paper that has like a textured, like vellum texture or something put on top of it. And then the papers inside are really nice and thick and almost feel like plasticized. Then on the inside, you get a bunch of designs, images, and objects by Sharon Hovarth. And then the writing and everything, and the design, the design of the whole, the typography and all that's done by Warren. So you can see here like how this book is both visual and literary in a much different sense than a standard comic book, but this is also quite different than your regular book. So the first chunk here is basically the story of this prostitute as she sees it from her side. And they send if you've ever read the Bible at all, these two young guys get sent in. The prostitute hides them, and they collect their information, and then they bounce out. And that's the story that's told here, but it's kind of told from her angle, like the social pressures that would have been put on her as a woman living in an ancient city like that. And then on the other side, we get more of these design bits, and then also things that are supposed to be journal entries by Rehoboam. And these are like giving her internal thoughts after the fall of Jericho, when she has left Jericho and joined the Israelites and become like an adopted Jew, basically, as they've taken over her city. And the story is like, oh, she went on and she joined them and she became happy. But in the journals, it's like, well, actually, she was just presenting happy on the outside because she was trying to survive. She had to get along with the Jews to survive. So it's a complex little book in terms of like the gendered and ethnic politics going into it, the kind of flipping of the narrative and all of that. Gets real politically complex in a compelling way. It's a beautiful little presentation, as you can see, very, very tactile. The presentation has a reason for being the way it is that's related to the content, which is always great. And then just the design and the production of it are awesome. As is A Life in Books. A Life in Books, definitely go read this book. Watch the review I did and get yourself a copy of this. This is one of my favorite novels I've ever read. I think this is one of the most ingenious things. And actually, this Daughter of Jericho book actually both of these projects, I believe, started as projects that were excerpted in here. These are all fictional projects that written by Blue Mobley, and at least these two, I don't know if Warren Lehrer has any more of the 101 stories in here that he needs to follow up on, but he's got at least 99 more stories in this book alone that haven't been told except in excerpt. And the majority of them sound pretty great. So I'm really looking forward to anything else that Warren Lehrer puts out. I'm really looking forward to interviewing Warren, and I just look forward to talking to him. I look forward to getting to know the guy because he's thinking about books in the way that I think about books and making the kind of books and projects, especially the interactive stuff. Like, I think the limits of comics and fiction novels and stuff on a tablet with interactive content, where now we're not only multimodal in the sense of pictures and visuals, but we have audio and motion and all these other modalities that we can think and speak and be creative in. I would like to see more books like that. So it's really cool to see someone who's actually doing it, and I look forward to getting to know Warren better. He's just a very interesting person. Plaza by Yokoyama Yuichi. This is translated by Ryan Holmberg and is very large for a manga, so that's a really cool feature of this book, this standard manga size. And this is just a 200 some odd page representation of what Yokoyama Yuichi thinks of the Carnival Parade, and he's just made this like relentlessly loud and rhythmic book that pushes all kinds of amazing boundaries of what comics and manga are, and we could not recommend this book more.